When you think about history, are there lots of old guys wearing wigs and stockings? When you think about history, is Napoleon really short? And folks have wooden teeth. Do you know that history can be the most incredible, amazing stories for you and me? Sit back and listen to a story right now. It's honest, it's fun, and it's sure to.
Hi, young historians. Welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. Are you as excited about this episode as I am? I sure hope so. We're about to dive into another story-filled adventure and learn something new. And remember, by learning more about the past, you can make a positive impact on the future. So pack your bags and let's go.
The Rocky Mountains, a beautiful but dangerous 3,000-mile stretch from Canada to New Mexico. It is about the width of the whole United States, with snow-peaked mountain tips, steep slopes, bears, and powerful rivers. Who would want to cross this? It would take a lot of strength and stamina to make the dangerous journey. In 1873, a courageous woman crossed the steep mountain range. Standing 4 feet 11 inches and battling ill health, she was not the explorer most people expected. But that is what makes her story even more astonishing. Her name was Isabella Bird, and she would become one of history's most inspiring female explorers and writers. Our story begins in 1831. One crisp October day, Reverend Bird and Mrs. Bird welcomed a baby girl. They named her Isabella. Isabella Bird began her life in Yorkshire, England. She spent her early years surrounded by England's beautiful green fields and rolling hills. As she grew, Isabella caught glimpses of a changing world. In the 19th century, Britain was in the middle of its Industrial Revolution. Isabella saw new gas lighting on the streets. New factories were built in cities near her home. Sometimes she could even hear the whistle of a new steam engine as it raced along the railway tracks. Perhaps one day, she thought, she would take a ride on one of those trains. Even from a young age, Isabella longed for a life of adventure. She loved to explore the countryside that lay just outside her home, but sometimes it seemed like a life of adventure wasn't possible. As a child, Isabella battled back pain, sleepless nights, and horrible headaches. She spent many days in bed feeling unwell. Not knowing what to do, her parents called a doctor for help. The doctor met with Isabella to try and figure out what was wrong, but he did not have good news. He feared one day she would be unable to move due to her pain. "What can be done?" Isabella's mother asked. "The young girl needs exercise and sunshine," the doctor said. Victorians are known for being strong believers in the healing power of fresh air and sunlight. While it may seem like a funny remedy, there's actually some truth to it. Following her doctor's orders, Isabella started spending more time outdoors. She took up rowing and became very skilled at riding horses. Due to her father's job, Isabella and her family moved often. Isabella grew up in many different towns and cities across England, and during this time, she struggled with her health. Sometimes, her family took trips to the seaside towns, and Isabella began to feel better. Breathing in the sea air and sitting in the sunlight did a wonder for her headaches. Victorians strongly believed that ocean air was healthier than the air in the cities. Because Isabella's family moved so often, she did not go to school like other children. Instead, she was homeschooled by her parents. Her mother and father encouraged Isabella's curiosity and taught her about the natural sciences and botany. That is the study of plants. Isabella loved exploring and learning about nature, and sometimes she did so without her parents' permission. One Sunday, her family went to church, and her mother told Isabella to stay in bed until they returned. Instead, she snuck out to the sunny garden. Isabella wanted to study the flowers, and she got away with her little trip too. She managed to get back into her bed before her family returned. Isabella was not afraid to break the rules or voice her opinion. She soon put her determination to good use and began writing. She published her first pamphlet when she was just 16 years old. As Isabella grew into a young woman, she began to write with great success. But she still felt unwell. In 1850, she had surgery to remove a tumor from her spine. This helped ease her pain, but she continued to suffer from exhaustion. To try and help their daughter, the Bird family spent 6 of their summers in Scotland. They hoped that the fresh Scottish air would improve Isabella's health. Still seeing no changes to her strength, doctors encouraged Isabella to travel. Little did they know that this would be the beginning of her life as an adventurer. In 1854, Isabella boarded a ship for her first trip across the ocean. She was heading to the United States and Canada for 7 months, and she was going alone. Before she left, her father gave her £100 for her travel. "Stay away from home as long as you can, Isabella," he advised. He was anxious for his daughter, but he was hopeful the trip would make her feel better. After Isabella boarded the ship, she found her room and settled in. There was some nervous chatter amongst the other passengers. "What if we get caught in a storm?" one wondered. "What if the ship sinks?" another passenger worried. Thankfully, nothing like that happened. "It was a very uneventful voyage," Isabella wrote. "The foul winds never blew, the icebergs kept far away. Even the fog off Newfoundland turned out to be a complete myth." Isabella kept in touch with her family by sending them letters about her new life in America. These letters would go on to form her first book, which was published just 2 years after she left home. She called this book An English Woman in America. It detailed her thoughts and feelings about America, why she went, and what she thought of the people. She must have had a good trip because she traveled back to the U.S. in 1857. Isabella's doctor had told her to never stay in one place too long, and she was happy to follow his advice. Sadly, the following year, her father passed away. Isabella, her sister, and her mother moved to Edinburgh, Scotland, where Isabella lived a calmer life. She helped the poor and continued with her writing. However, staying in one place wasn't good for Isabella, and her health began to get worse. Isabella realized she had caught a bug, but not the kind you think. No, Isabella Bird had caught the travel bug. She couldn't wait to go on another trip. After the death of her mother, Isabella and her sisters moved to the Scottish Isle of Mull. Isabella began busying herself, planning her next adventure. Soon enough, she set sail across the ocean. Isabella's first stop was Australia, but she quickly carried on to New Zealand. It was the middle of summer when she arrived in New Zealand's capital city. The trees drooped in the heat, and she could hear the buzz of cicadas as she walked along the dusty road. Later that day, she climbed aboard the ship that would take her on her next journey. She was traveling to California. Isabella was happy to escape the hot sun, but she was a little worried. She had heard the ship was very old. As she explored the room, she spotted water dripping from the ceiling. "Is the deck leaking?" Isabella wondered. She soon spied cockroaches scurrying across the floorboards. And in her room, she found a broken mattress. As Isabella feared, the journey would not be an easy one. Just 2 days into the trip, a dangerous hurricane hit.
Hi friends, are you enjoying today's episode? I'd like to take a quick break from the story to tell you about another great place to learn about the past. Honest History creates magazines and books for kids that are filled with fun stories and activities that bring history to life. From pirates to spies to great inventions and so much more, you'll learn about interesting people, places, and events from around the world that made history. Created for kids ages 6 through 12, you can sign up and receive new adventures delivered straight to your doorstep every quarter. Just visit honesthistory.co. That's honesthistory.co to sign up today. Oh, and here's a special offer for our podcast listeners. Use code ANYTIMENOW for 10% off. Again, that special code is ANYTIMENOW. Okay, let's get back to the story.
passengers gathered in the deck house and clung to the sides. The ship groaned and shivered as the winds and waves beat against it. "We hoped for the best, and there was no use speaking about the worst," Isabella remembered. Hours later, the winds began to calm down. Isabella looked out the window and saw the endless ocean all around her. She couldn't see any land. Just a few days later, however, one of the crewmen awoke the passengers with good news. "The islands are in sight!" he cried. Isabella sprang out of bed and spotted a bit of green in the distance. Her excitement grew as the ship got closer. "There's Honolulu!" someone shouted. They had just made it to Hawaii. A passenger aboard the ship convinced Isabella to get off the ship instead of going straight to California. When Isabella visited Hawaii, the Hawaiian people had faced many hardships in the recent years. In the early 1850s, Hawaii was struck by an epidemic of diseases, including measles and smallpox. These deadly illnesses were brought by Europeans who came to Hawaii to spread Christianity and colonize the islands. Isabella was a devout Christian and agreed with missionary work, but she quickly developed an appreciation for the Hawaiian people and their way of life. She traveled across the islands on horseback, breathing in the fresh air. She climbed the towering volcanoes of Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. She explored remote villages, living with the local people and learning about their customs. Isabella believed English people could learn a thing or two from the Hawaiians. She was inspired by the Hawaiians' joyous lifestyle and preferred it over the strict rules Victorian women had to follow. Isabella spent 6 months in Hawaii. After climbing the island's steep volcanoes, she felt ready to conquer her next adventure, Colorado's Rocky Mountains. Her doctor had told her to find some cleaner air, and Colorado seemed like the perfect place. In Colorado, Isabella lived alongside the rough and rugged cowboys, riding horses and sleeping under the stars. After spending so much time outside, Isabella began to feel better. For her, living out west was a healthier lifestyle. But that didn't mean it was easy. During her journey, she encountered wolves, poisonous rattlesnakes, and even grizzly bears. In the winter, Isabella rode off alone on her favorite horse, Birdie. "Birdie is the queen of ponies," Isabella said. "She is always cheerful, never tired, and her legs are like rocks." Isabella and Birdie journeyed through the freezing cold and heavy snow for a month. Isabella managed to survive by knocking on people's cabins and asking to stay a while. During this time, she decided to climb the treacherous Rocky Mountains, going all the way to the top of Long's Peak. As she hiked the towering mountain, Isabella gasped for breath. The thin air was so dry she could barely speak, but when she reached the top, she marveled at the scene around her. "It was something at last to stand upon the crown of this rocky range," Isabella declared. "For here, you can see the waters start from both oceans." Her time in Colorado, however, was cut short. Later that year, a financial crisis hit, and the bank refused to cash her banknotes. Without money, Isabella had to return home. Isabella also had to say goodbye to a new friend. During her short adventure in Colorado, she had fallen in love with a fur trapper known as Rocky Mountain Jim. He was a bit of a mystery, and at times dangerous, his face scarred from a bear attack. But he had a love for poetry and showed great kindness towards Isabella. Although Isabella grew to love him, she feared his dark past and knew a life together would never work. When he asked her to marry him, Isabella turned him down. "Rocky Mountain Jim," she declared, "was a man any woman might love, but no sane woman would marry." This wasn't the only love in her life, though. As she returned home, Isabella caught the eye of a surgeon named Dr. John Bishop. Despite this happy moment in her life, sadness still followed. Her beloved sister, Henrietta, passed away from typhoid. The next year, Isabella married John Bishop and decided to dedicate her next book to her sister Henrietta. Like so many of her books, this one was made up of letters she had sent to her family while she traveled. Her newest book was about her journey through the Malay Peninsula in Thailand and Myanmar. For the next 5 years, Isabella was itching to travel again, but she stayed home. She spent much of this time studying medicine and caring for her husband. After her husband passed away, Isabella decided it was time to get back on the road. At nearly 60 years old, she traveled to India and started setting up hospitals in memory of those that she loved. She then continued to Iraq, Iran, and Armenia. And she kept going. In 1894, she arrived in Japan and traveled to Korea and China. Along the way, she hired people who helped her on her extraordinary journey. Translators, workmen, and chair bearers who, without their help, she would have never succeeded. During this time, Isabella also became interested in photography. In the late 1800s, photography was still a pretty new technology. Back then, people didn't use handheld cameras like we do now. Instead, the equipment was very big and had to be put on a stand. It took about 15 minutes just to take one picture. Isabella took the bulky equipment with her during her travels, making her one of the first travel photographers. And fortunately, for us, many of her photos have survived. And yet, despite her exciting and active lifestyle, Isabella still suffered from periods of ill health. After one last great adventure to Morocco, Isabella sadly passed away from an illness in her Edinburgh home in 1904. She was 72 years old. No one expected Isabella to live such an adventurous life, and she certainly proved that women were so much more than their expected Victorian role inside the home. Isabella's legacy lives on in her achievements. She wrote over 15 books and became the first woman to be awarded the honorary fellowship of the Royal Scottish Geographical Society. She was also the first woman allowed to join the Royal Geographical Society. She traveled to the far corners of the world, to places few English women had ever seen. Even today, Isabella Bird continues to inspire people to take risks and, most importantly, to live an unexpected life.
Welcome back! What did you think of today's adventure? We hope you learned something new. Be sure to share the story with your friends and family, and use what you've learned today to go out there and make a positive impact on history yourself. That's all for now, but if you want to learn more about important and amazing stories from the past, be sure to subscribe to Honest History Magazine, where you'll discover stories from around the world. Thanks for listening. This episode was narrated by Randall Lawrence and written by Heidi Coburn. Production was led by Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about Honest History, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media.